Good morning, friends. Dobroho ranku drusi. Distinguished guests, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here on behalf of the Minister of International Development and la Francophonie, Marie-Claude Bibeau. I want to thank the Canada-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce and the Conference Board of Canada for organizing today's event. It's an important milestone. This is the first major event under the Canada-Ukraine Trade Investment Support, or CUTIS project, which is supported by the Government of Canada. And judging by the numbers this morning, we are off to a very promising start. I am encouraged to see so many guests and participants from the Ukrainian-Canadian community, including, I just saw, my good friend and colleague, Member of Parliament for Etobicoke, Boris Brzezinski, and a strong advocate for Ukraine in the House of Commons, the private sector, and the Ukrainian delegation. I would like to extend a special welcome to Alexander Danylyuk, who we just heard from, Ukraine's Minister of Finance, Natalia Mikolska, Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Economic Development and Trade, Igor Bilus, Head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine, and Francis Malij, Managing Director of Eastern Europe and Caucasus for the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. We're so pleased you could be here. Welcome to Toronto. Welcome to Canada. Vitayemo vas u Kanadi. The historic ties between Canada and Ukraine extend back through generations of Ukrainian migration to Canada. For over 120 years, the Ukrainian community has contributed to the social, economic, and political fabric of Canada. They have engaged wholeheartedly as active participants in the key institutions of Canadian democracy, as city council members, as members of provincial and federal parliaments, as journalists, judges, and even as the Governor-General of Canada. Ukrainian Canadians have given so much to Canada, and Canada remains committed to giving back to Ukraine. In 1991, Canada was the first Western nation to recognize Ukraine's independence. Since then, we have devoted considerable effort and resources to support Ukraine's democratic and economic transition, including during and following the difficult times of the Euromaidan Revolution. Through it all, Canada has been one of Ukraine's biggest supporters and lead international assistance partners. In fact, Canada is proud to contribute to Ukraine's economic stabilization and to support institutional reform to put Ukraine on a path to inclusive and sustainable prosperity that improves opportunities for the most vulnerable and marginalized. Canada has been steadfast in its commitment to the people of Ukraine. When the government of Ukraine expressed its desire to break with the past and set itself on the course to democracy and European integration, the Government of Canada increased, expedited, and broadened its support across a number of different sectors, whether it was for macroeconomic stabilization, democratic and economic reforms, including stimulating economic growth through the CUTIS project, promoting the rule of law, security and stability, or humanitarian assistance. I want to assure you that you can count on our government for continued support in these areas. I would like to use this opportunity to set the scene for Canada's and Ukraine's many areas of cooperation and briefly touch on the areas where our government sees potential for future opportunities for partnership. As we know, in Canada, building transparent institutions, promoting a strong regulatory framework, and strengthening the rule of law can and does facilitate increased trade and investment in a country, and therefore greater economic prosperity. Canada is a staunch supporter of Ukraine's democratic transition and a lead partner in election support, judicial reform, and civil society support. One example is Canada's support for the development of a more effective legal aid system, which provides free legal aid services to prospective clients, including the most marginalized and vulnerable citizens, thus increasing protection of their rights and improving their access to justice. A more inclusive society will help foster economic growth, and Canada has been and will continue to be a strong supporter of Ukraine's sustainable economic development. In order to help Ukraine avoid a total economic collapse following the Euromaidan Revolution, Canada took a comprehensive approach to economic assistance that supports the stabilization, reform, and growth of the Ukrainian economy. I would like to congratulate the Ukrainian government, particularly on the hard work of the Ministry of Finance and the National Bank of Ukraine for their efforts in stabilizing the economy following the 2014 crisis and the destabilization following the conflict in the East. Within the short time frame since the outburst of the conflict, your government has managed to create a stable economic environment, and I was glad to see that the latest figures show that Ukraine is now on the path towards economic growth. Canada's support for the International Monetary Fund provided technical assistance to the National Bank of Ukraine and the Ukrainian Ministry of Finance to implement these difficult but needed reforms. This support, which continues today, is critical as it sets the stage for other important reforms that will bring about sustainable economic growth and poverty reduction in Ukraine. It's important to remember that alleviating poverty and stimulating sustainable economic growth are two sides of the same coin. To promote prosperity, we must reach the poorest and most vulnerable people, including women and children. This also means focusing on those who, despite improved overall economic circumstances in recent years, are still vulnerable to falling back into poverty. That is why Canada's investments in Ukraine focus on promoting more inclusive private sector-led growth, investment, and job creation to reduce poverty. Stimulating the growth of small and medium enterprises helps to expand and strengthen the middle class. And as Canada knows from experience, a healthy, civically engaged middle class and small business sector is the key to a well-functioning democracy. Ukraine's SME sector is still smaller than in other European countries, but it has contributed greatly to Ukraine's employment and economic growth. Our government will continue to promote the development of SMEs in Ukraine to increase their productivity, strengthen their involvement in trade, and their ability to attract foreign investment. The Canadian-funded QDIS project, which is responsible for organizing this Canada-Ukraine Business Forum, is an example of this type of engagement. Over the next 5 years, QDIS will support the efforts of Ukrainian SMEs, including women-owned and operated businesses, to export to and attract investment from Canada. QDIS is just one initiative that's making a difference for the people of Ukraine by creating jobs and reducing poverty. Canadian-supported international assistance initiatives targeting Ukraine's agriculture sector are helping small and medium-sized farming operations improve the quality and quantity of their produce, more easily access financing, adopt innovative practices, and secure export markets. Let me give you a few examples. Around 10,000 dairy farmers are being organized in cooperatives to enable them to better access services and market their products with large processors such as Danone. This initiative helps to improve the quantity and quality of the milk they produce and to increase their household incomes. In the horticultural sector, a project is targeting SMEs, mostly led by women, to improve cooperation between SMEs so that they can access services they are unable to access on their own. And we are also supporting the construction of a grain elevator, which will help with the market integration of cooperatives. Together, these initiatives will alleviate poverty in Ukraine through sustainable economic growth, increased employment, and prosperity. Trade is another critical area. And in fact, trade and development go hand in hand in the Canada-Ukraine bilateral relationship. The conflict in the East has resulted in setbacks, with Ukraine's trade with Russia dropping by 74% in 2015 compared to 2013. However, Ukraine has responded to these changes by shifting its exports to new markets. I want to congratulate the government of Ukraine for recently signing the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with the European Union. Our countries also recently concluded negotiations on the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, which we hope to sign soon. Canada's International Trade Minister, Chrystia Freeland, will speak more to that later this afternoon. This is another area where the QDIS project can offer important value added. Through regional centres, QDIS will provide technical assistance on how to seize the potential of the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. It will also help the capacity of the Ukrainian government partners to put new systems and processes in place to facilitate greater trade and investment flows between Canada and Ukraine. Strong, efficient, accountable, and predictable institutions are key to attracting investment and fostering the growth of SMEs. Each of these initiatives will help to increase broad-based economic growth in Ukraine. Canada is supporting all of these things, and so much more, because we believe in the people of Ukraine. Building on our comparative advantages, using more innovative programming mechanisms and partnerships to achieve lasting results is part of the core of our thinking and commitment to international development assistance. Reflecting this commitment, Canada's Minister of International Development and la Francophonie, Minister Marie-Claude Bibeau, recently launched a public review of the policy, funding, and delivery framework that guides Canada's international assistance. The aim is to rethink our international assistance policies and programs so we can develop 21st century solutions to 21st century global challenges and opportunities. Public consultations are an important element of this review. I strongly encourage all of you to participate in the public consultations and provide your feedback through our website. You have a unique perspective that can help us strengthen our approach. And these consultations are not only being held domestically, but also abroad through Canada's diplomatic network. As an example, our diplomatic staff at our embassy in Kiev has held several meetings and consultations with partners on the ground and officials from the Ukrainian government. Although it's too early to tell what this new approach will look like, we know that the rights and health of women and girls, climate change and clean economic growth, and humanitarian assistance will be among Canada's top priorities. I want to take a moment now just to talk about climate change and green growth because I know Ukraine has recently introduced reforms to increase its energy efficiency. I commend your government for these efforts. Increased energy efficiency can lead to increased stability for Ukraine, reduced corruption in that sector, and more economic opportunities. It also contributes to the global fight against climate change. This is in line with Canada's leadership in the global fight against climate change. Energy efficiency is also a major topic of discussion during this Canada-Ukraine Business Forum. Canada has significant expertise in this sector, including from the Ukrainian-Canadian community, which could be beneficial to Ukraine. I know there are several companies from the renewable energy sector here today. I hope that collaboration in this sector will increase following today's event and throughout the QDIS project. As I mentioned earlier, Canada has strong historic ties with Ukraine. We have forged these alliances out of a shared understanding of Ukraine's unique challenges and a common desire to see the country overcome them. Let me conclude by reiterating that through support for democratization, inclusive social practices, the development of a vibrant SME sector, and stronger regulatory framework, Canada is committed to seeing greater economic prosperity in Ukraine and the continued partnership between our two countries. Our government looks forward to continuing with that work, and we are hopeful that through events and forums like this, the connections you will make today will grow over the coming years and evolve into mutually beneficial partnerships that will benefit all Ukrainians, including those who are poorest and most vulnerable. Thank you.